guys, it's Will with Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society, here today with a review of the 88 Films Blu-ray release of the 1985 Jackie Chan starring Grindhouse spectacular, The Protector. This film was written and directed by James Glickenhaus. It also stars Danny Aiello. And in the Hong Kong version, Sally Ye is also in it. Who else is in it? I think Roy Chow is in it. And this was just released in 2019. And so what I'm going to do in this review is I'm going to talk about like the physical aspects of it, the packaging and stuff. I'm going to talk about the movie itself because this is a new 2K remaster, and this is whatever, like a 1080 like presentation of it on the Blu-ray. And then I'll talk about the special features that are on here. So to get into the physical aspects of this release, it's really, really fantastic. Like this is, I would say, for me, like Criterion Collection is really like the zenith of like the physical presentation of the films. And outside of Criterion, these 88 Films Jackie Chan releases are like probably some of the best that I have. There's a slipcase here which has unique cover art from a guy named Kung Fu Bob, whose real name is R.P. O'Brien, it says on the back here. And this is a limited edition slipcase, and these are, I think, these are going for £15. So 88 Films is a British company, and this is a Region B Blu-ray, which is something to be aware of. And so that means it'll play on like commercial European players. If you're living in the U.S., you would need an all-region or like region-free or whatever player to play this. So the slipcase is exclusive to the first run, and as I said, I think these are £15. And so I looked this up last night because I was curious what that was in dollars. It's like $19-ish or $20. So it's a really good price for like how high quality is and like the how good the bonus features are, which I'll get into in a second here. But so you have the slipcase, and then one of the things I'm really impressed about is this Blu-ray case. It's like really heavy duty, nice hard plastic with like strong, like a lot of Blu-ray cases, if you put something on top of them, you can see them like bow in the middle. And it doesn't even have to be something heavy. Like they're just weak, crappy plastic, and it's just kind of like a tossed off thing to get it out there. This is really nice. And I was kind of surprised by how nice it was when I got it. And another thing that's really cool about this is that there's a little like cutout here inside of the slipcase, so you can like poke your finger in, because the whole thing was wrapped in plastic when it came. You could poke your finger in and peel off the plastic, and you don't have to worry about like damaging anything. Or that was pretty innovative and cool, I thought. So you open up here and you have the disc, and there is reversible artwork, so you can take this out, and there's an other cover in here. And if you're really interested in seeing like close-ups of all of this, we shot like a nice close-up unboxing that we'll put up on IGTV and YouTube soon, so you can see everything in more detail. And then the booklet here is really fantastic too. It has tons and tons of pages of artwork, behind-the-scenes photos, alternate posters from different countries around the world, like a lot of rare pictures and stuff. It's really cool. Oh, Moon Lee is in this movie too, which I forgot to say. And what's really interesting about that is that Moon Lee is, really well known for doing martial arts films in the late 80s and early 90s. And in this film, she has just like a plain kind of speaking acting role. She doesn't do any martial arts. So it's really interesting to see her in that capacity. There's also an essay in here that's really interesting called Jackie Chan Western Style. And it's kind of about like how this movie was made, kind of the background information behind it, Golden Harvest trying to break into the U.S. market, and how they were trying to kind of brand Jackie Chan, and it relates it to Bruce Lee and stuff like that. So the movie itself. The movie here looks incredible. And so when I did a review recently of the Wheels on Meals Hong Kong Rescue Collection Blu-ray release, and I said in that video that I had never seen like a classic 80s Jackie Chan movie look that good before, other than like individual clips I'd seen of like remasters on YouTube and stuff. I would say that this looks a lot better than that. And obviously the reason for that is that Hong Kong Rescue is what they do is they find other Blu-rays and then they clean those up. They're not going back to the film source. They went back to the film print on this, and they did a 2K remaster of the film print. And everything about this looks really good. And especially for a film that I think a lot of people are used to seeing on like VHS or like low quality DVD copies, where the movie looks really incredible to me, and where I really kind of like pinched myself like, wow, am I really watching this right now? Is when they first arrive in Hong Kong and you get a landscape of the city at night, and then they drive through the city, and then there's a scene of them walking around on the streets, and you get all those neon signs, and the definition of the colors and the shapes and of all the signs like in the night against the darkness and stuff like that it's incredible. It looks really phenomenal. So for that alone, I would say this release is worth picking up. And this was actually shot by, there's an interview on here with Mark Irwin. I'll talk about that in a minute. He is he was the DP on the movie, the cinematographer, and I didn't know this until I watched the interview with him, but he shot like Videodrome, The Brood, Scanners, The Fly, like a lot of Cronenberg movies. He shot Scream. He did Passenger 57 with Wesley Snipes. So he's like a big-time director of photography. And this movie really, like, seeing it in HD like that, I was really able to tell that someone who actually, knew what they were doing, and not just like, obviously, because every professional cinematographer to some degree knows what they're doing, but like a really, really talented cinematographer worked on this movie, and that really comes through in the remaster. So to talk about the bonus features, there's a lot of really great stuff on here. There's probably about, if you don't count there's 2 audio commentary tracks, because there are 2 versions of this film. This has the remaster of the Hong Kong version, or the US version of the film, excuse me. There was a separate version for the Hong Kong market, which Jackie Chan directed reshoots for, that's on here in standard definition. They didn't go back and remaster that from the source. Both of those have audio commentaries on them. So, and the movie is, it's about 90 minutes. So that alone is 3 hours of bonus features, right? If you take that out of it, I think it's about 2 to 2.5 hours of bonus features on here, 2.5. And really solid stuff, too. So there's an interview with James Glickenhaus, who wrote and directed this film, and it is called Hard Edge. And it's a brand new interview from 2019. And this interview is fascinating. Like, this interview alone is worth the price of admission. I have never seen James Glickenhaus speak before. And it's just really interesting because he seems to have a really good memory. And he has some really interesting things to say about working with Raymond Chow, working with Golden Harvest, working with Jackie Chan, Danny Aiello. And it's interesting because he repeatedly says throughout the interview, when I met Jackie and when we worked on the film, he was really, really friendly and super amiable, and no one ever had any problems with him, and there was no conflict. If you know anything about this movie, you know that there was a lot of shade thrown years after the fact by Jackie, especially saying that, like, James Glickenhaus never understood who he was as a performer, and they tried to make him this kind of Dirty Harry character, and that's why Jackie went and did those reshoots, because he thought the martial arts scenes were really boring and not directed in an interesting way. So he added martial arts scenes, but he also added some comedy to the movie. And I'm going to do a separate video in which I talk about all the differences between these 2 versions, because that's like a whole other topic. But what's interesting is that James Glickenhaus again and again says, we never had any problems on the set. He was very nice. He was very easy to work with. But then he also says some kind of stuff like there's one section where he was like, I didn't care at all what Jackie Chan wanted about this movie. Like, there's this weird, like, undercurrent of bitterness at the same time as he's saying, oh, he was fine. But it's very interesting. But he also says some stuff that, I mean, everything is about perspective, right? It's the Rashomon effect. Everything is subjective. But, he talks about how he was brought onto this movie by Golden Harvest because he made a movie called The Exterminator, which was really successful. It was like a super low-budget Grindhouse movie, and it did really, really well from how much it had cost to make. And this movie was given a $3.5 million budget. That's something else he talks about that's really interesting. So it was $3.5 million to make, and Golden Harvest was able to sell the international rights to the film for $5 million. So before the movie even came out, they had made their money back. So he talks in the thing about how it was a financial success. He didn't really care how much of a theatrical distribution it got in the U.S. because it got very limited theatrical distribution in the U.S. and then it went straight to VHS. But he talks a lot about how he got the job based on his success and how his movie had been a big success and that he was known for doing low-budget action movies, and he directed really good action sequences and stuff like that. He then talks about Jackie Chan like he's this very niche local star who they needed to launch internationally. And he even says a couple times in the video he was not an international star. But he also says in the interview that Jackie Chan was already huge in Japan. It's like, well, if he's big in Hong Kong, he's big in Japan, technically he is an international star already, right? But I kind of think by 1985, and I might be wrong about this because I'm not like a Jackie Chan scholar or an expert on the history of these things, but by 1985, I feel like Jackie's films were doing well on home video, in a lot of different markets. And Mark Irwin, the cinematographer, actually talks about how, and this is really funny to me, when he was hired on the movie, he had no idea who James Glickenhaus was, but he was really familiar with Jackie Chan because he's from Toronto, and there was a Golden Harvest movie theater in Toronto, and he and his friends would go and see all the Jackie Chan movies when they came out. So it's this really interesting case of perspective and how all these different people understood their roles on the film. And I'm not going to tell you every single thing that's in the interview. It's like 25 minutes long, so there's a ton of stuff in there, and you should go and watch it. So Mark Irwin is really interesting because James Glickenhaus is this kind of like deadpan person with like a good memory who's obviously very intelligent, who talks about things kind of very pragmatically. Mark Irwin is kind of like someone's really fun grandpa. Like, he's got this big white beard and these big glasses, and he's like very jovial, and he also has a very good memory. But his memory, James Glickenhaus's memory, is about like the business deals that were made, the people that he worked with, stuff like that. Mark Irwin's memory is about like, oh, on our first day in Hong Kong, everyone came and we did this ceremony and we slaughtered a pig, and like he remembers like the day-to-day life of making the film and the people that he worked with. And he gives these really amazing descriptions of, you know, his first day on the set in Hong Kong and it just being complete and utter chaos. And at some point he said he went to the first AD and was like, is this just happening because it's the first day? And the guy was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, it's complete and utter insanity on this set right now. And the guy was just kind of like, is it? I don't know. This is just what it's like making movies here. And he talks about how they would be making like multiple movies simultaneously for Golden Harvest, and they were in this giant, well, it was a studio, but he said it was a studio in the sense that a silent film studio would exist because it was like very porous for like the soundproofing was burlap sacks hung from the ceiling basically, and the rigs to hang the lights. So if you've ever been in a movie studio, they have these big lattices on the hanging from the ceiling where all the lights are hung from, and they're metal and they're really well secured and they're very durable and stuff. He said that on this Hong Kong movie set they had like wooden boards with holes drilled into them that they hung the lights from, and the lights were so heavy on these boards that they were sagging, and if they needed to adjust the light, someone would jump on somebody else's shoulders, get up on top of the wooden boards, and the wooden boards would like bounce as they walked on them because they were unsecured. And he talks about how like they'd never seen a Chapman dolly before, which is a certain type of dolly that's used in filmmaking, and like so the camera crew didn't know how to use it, and he had to teach them how to use it. And it's written. They used mostly static shots at the time in Hong Kong, and so when he wanted to set up track to do this like more complicated shot and to run multiple cameras at the same time, Jackie or someone else on the set would be like, no, that's not how we do it, or like, that's a waste of time, we're not going to bother setting that up and stuff like that. So, but he's very, Mark Irwin is, James Glickenhaus seems in his interview like his attitude was kind of like, no, we're going to do it my way because this is the way I know how to do it. And Mark Irwin is kind of like, when in Rome, okay, this is what you guys want to do, whatever, that's fine. He's very chill. It's a very interesting interview. The other thing that's on here that's really cool is a side-by-side of the two cuts of the film, and then like a Jackie Chan film scholar goes through the major differences and points them out, and that's about 20 minutes long, so that was really cool to watch. The commentary tracks, there's a commentary track on both versions of the film. Like I said, I watched about half of the commentary track on the US version of the film, and it's with Mike Leader, who is like a Hong Kong film expert. I think he's like a casting director. I think he lives and works in Hong Kong. We follow him on Instagram, so I like see his posts and stuff like that. He's worked in the industry, I think, for a long time. And then a guy named, I'm looking for his name here, Arnie Venema, I think, or Arnie Venema. So, and he's a filmmaker. And it's their commentary track is like very jocular. Like, it seems like they know each other well and they're friends and they're just watching the movie having a lot of fun, but because they're a filmmaker and a veteran of the film industry, they know a lot about the movie. So you learn interesting things about it too, while it has this Mystery Science Theater 3000 aspect of them just like riffing on the movie and being kind of silly. It's really fun. There's also some promotional materials on here, the Japanese trailer, the international trailer, the Hong Kong trailer, and the Japanese teaser. And those are all cool because if you've seen trailers from that time, like those Golden Harvest trailers, they would put behind-the-scenes footage in the trailer. So you see footage of them like on the set and stuff like that, and like getting people like amped up for the film and like what's going to come. And it's actually, I think, a very clever promotional device that people don't use anymore. But But there you go. So, I mean, that's about that. That's my review. I think this is a fantastic release. I highly recommend it, especially if you are a fan of this film. There are some people who really don't like this movie. And I understand why. If you're like really a fan of the action comedy stuff, the Sammo Hung, Jackie Chan, Yuen Biao, like that style of filmmaking, I would totally get why you wouldn't be into this film. But if you're a fan of like hardcore action films like Badass Hong Kong, like 80s action, American grindhouse cinema, I think you'll really dig this movie. Danny Aiello and Jackie are just beasts in this movie. This is apparently the first time that Jackie ever swore in English in a movie. It was the first time he ever used guns extensively in movies too, because that was not a part of his reputation or his image at the time in Hong Kong. So it's interesting for that. Location photography in Hong Kong and New York City in 84, 85, which is really cool to see. So, yeah, I mean, highly recommended. This is the 88 films release, like I said, of The Protector.